Welcome to Complexity Made Simple. My name is Paul Allen, and before we get into today's video newsletter, I'd like to offer you a free DMAIC guide that you can go to now and download using the link in the video description below. So before you watch today's video, click on the link and get your free guide now. Welcome to the latest video, and in this video newsletter what we're going to talk about, well, we're going to answer an email query that I recently received on LinkedIn from one of the people that watch my videos, and it's all about 30 pieces to predict tomorrow. So Carol, you sent me the query. We're going to take a look at the query now. I said I would make a video for you. It's taken me a little bit longer than I planned, but I've been traveling quite a lot just lately. So let's take a look at Carol's query, and then we'll talk about how to answer it and what benefit he can get looking at the data that he's got in the correct way. Let's take a look at Carol's query. Okay, so you can see here, look, I've put his message on a slide, and he says, "Hi Paul, I'm looking for some help. I've got some electronic modules that need to be soaked overnight in order to check if the pre-soaked power output stays within limits." Now, this is a very common thing to do in the electronics world, the idea of soaking the circuit and then looking for errors, changes, results, etc. It's quite a common thing. We used to do something quite similar when I worked at Sony. And he says the process looks like this. The power output for each individual module is set to be 0.9, I think that's milliwatts. Modules are clamped on an aluminium bar, connected to 5 volts inside the soaking cabinet, and after 12 hours of soaking, modules are taken out of the cabinet and their power is retested. If it stays within the spec limit, it passes. If not, it fails. It's pass-fail criteria. Module output power should be within a particular tolerance based on this process. Can I collect a sample of 30 modules to predict tomorrow and therefore decide in future not to soak the modules because none of them fail? What would the sample size be for CPK, please? I often hear you saying 30 pieces. Okay, so number of issues here. The first thing is pass-fail. Now, in the world of electronics, this is quite common. We have lots of jigs that test the circuit and various things, whether the circuit is performing at all, whether the circuit is performing within limits. We've often got circuit testing equipment, and it's often pass-fail. There's a red light, there's a green light. The operator who's testing them doesn't necessarily need to know the result. They just know if it's a good one or a bad one, and then the technician does the rest. However, if you're trying to problem solve or process improve, in other words, you're trying to gain information so that you can decide, maybe I don't need to test these. Pass-fail data is appalling, absolutely appalling. It is useless to you. And what Carol's asking is, well, can I take 30 pieces to predict tomorrow? Not as pass-fail. So the message I've sent him back says, job one, the first thing you need to do is to see the values. You need to see the results properly, not pass-fail. Then what you're going to do with the data is very simple. You're going to do a run chart. You're going to do a histogram. And finally, you're going to do a CPK diagram. And then you can judge the physics of what's going on. You can only see this with the values. This data is information rich, and it is telling you all about the physics that you have in your modules and potentially where to look to fix the problem. And then of course, if you can fix the problem, maybe you don't have to test them or soak them at all, because you have perfect confidence in the design of the item instead of having to test the item to death constantly and soak them, etc. So this is the crucial, I would say this is the crucial diagram, although you might see some trends in the run chart, but this is the crucial diagram, the histogram. So what might you see? So the first thing, let's put some tolerances. Let's put some tolerances up here. I'm going to draw a few versions of this. So let's put some tolerances. I'll get rid of that. Okay. So what might you see? Well, the first thing you might see is, you might see this. Okay. And of course, there would be a before. He's also talking about checking the before and checking the after. But let's say the after looks like that. Now, if the after looks like that, of course, what you're grading out the tails there. This is a problem with your design. So whatever is driving your design to be a little bit too low there, you should be able to fix this. There's a good capability, you're nice and tight. You could easily position that here. Then you're asking, could I then not do the soak? Could I predict what's going to happen? Well, eventually, yes. If you eventually make that sit on that target, batch after batch after batch after batch, because you've changed the design, bang, you're all good. We don't need to keep testing this. We don't need to keep soaking it. We know we are going to be right. So you could see that. What else could you see? You could see this. Should have drawn the tolerances a little bit closer, I think. But anyway, we're going to suggest that maybe it looks like this. Now this is a different problem. You're outside the tolerance either side. You've got high results, low results. There's nothing you can do by shifting the center like we did here. We shifted that over. What you've got to do now is pull this in and obviously make it central. So this is about understanding the physics of the problem. Only values can do this. So now what are you likely to do? Well, again, you're going to change the design. So let's say you have some components which are plus or minus, I think they go plus or minus, or is it just 20%? I'm not sure. I'm not an electronics engineer to know, but I know that components are sometimes 20% parts, sometimes 10% parts, sometimes 5%, sometimes 1%. This result will be because you're using these type of components up here to keep the price down. Now, if you get a good designer, he should be able to know the important components in that circuit. I once did this at Sony. We identified two components in a particular performance of TVs I was making. We changed the parts from, I think, 10% down to 1%. We pulled the tails right in, and the televisions got easier to make, easier to adjust. You're going to have to change from up here to down here certain components that transform that result. Once you get the result standing on end like that, you can put it on target. Same thing. You don't have to do the soak anymore. You can predict tomorrow. And then finally, and this is more tricky, you might get something that looks like this. So as a generality, maybe you're pretty good. Maybe you're nice and tight, and maybe you're inside the tolerance there, which sort of says, oh, okay, we'll be good. But then what you get is this. you get flyers sitting out like this. And you're going, what the hell are they? Now that is more of a tricky. That's probably a process that isn't working properly. So what you've done is you've assembled the component wrong. Maybe you've laid down the components poorly in the auto insert department. Now at this point, if you've got that problem, you're gonna have to soak them and you're gonna have to inspect the good from the bad. There's no choice here, but of course what you've got to do is investigate these, find out the cause, eliminate the causes, and if you start to get that, all fine and dandy. Now of course you might get a mixture of some of this, but Carol, if you can get the 30 pieces, you can see the physics of the pass and the fail, and then you can understand how to influence the physics. That is why 30 pieces of values, continuous data, is gold. If you just go pass fail, you ignored all of this great information, you'll have to soak these modules until you finally don't make them anymore, because you don't understand the physics of what's wrong. Get the real values, understand the physics, predict tomorrow, and of course, make more money.